So yesterday was the big day, June 2024 ATX exam. Got lots of feedback yesterday from my students as to the topics that they were getting, the highs, the lows. I thought it would be useful just to do a quick debrief of yesterday's exam. Most of the students I spoke to were saying that they maybe ran a little bit over, but not much. Most of them managed to get something down for every requirement, which is half the battle. Most of the students started with section B and tackled those questions. Now let's talk about that big 50-mark question 1 then. What was in it? Not a surprise at all, we had groups. We had some real core elements of groups with some extra additional topics in there, like VAT groups, for example. It had some overseas elements in it as well, and having to make a decision about whether to include or exclude certain companies from the group. We had a real mix of other topics within question 1, depending on which variation students got. We had some students who had research and development costs. We had other students that were having to deal with chargeable gains groups and overseas permanent establishments. Of course, as ever, we have 5 ethics marks in question 1. We had one that was focusing on the GAR and tax evasion versus tax avoidance. That is a fairly standard ethics question, and I know my students had done that as part of one of their mocks. You always need to remember to apply the theory that you know to the specific client that you've got though. And we also had an ethics topic where we had an incorrect VAT return, and we had issues around the correction of that VAT return and reporting of the error to HMRC. We've definitely seen errors come up and how we have to deal with our client and encourage them to report that to HMRC, and then the actions we as the advisors need to take if our client refuses to take that action. What about our 2 25-mark questions then? Well, the surprise for this exam was that many students didn't have a question that had capital gains tax and inheritance tax together in the same question. The key thing to take away from this June 24 paper is that you just cannot expect to see a standard kind of paper that you've seen in the past when you enter into your ATX exam. What you need to do in the exam is go in and go, okay, this looks different to what I've done before, but I have the knowledge. I need to pick through the right knowledge and I need to apply it to this particular question. So from a capital gains tax point of view, we had some issues around EMI shares, EIS shares. We had classic car. That was a real spanner in the works for many students. Other things we had come up were decisions about selling paintings at different dates, capital gains tax on the sale of overseas property, taxing under the remittance basis, and some gift holdover relief to consider as well when we had a gift to a trust. The inheritance tax elements that students were asked to look at covered a range of common areas as well. And some students did have a question that compared inheritance tax and capital gains tax on a series of gifts, and we were looking at which date should we be choosing for them. There were some fairly standard computations to be done, lots of half marks to be picked up there. It's really important that you understand all the overseas issues that we can see coming up in an exam. Think about all the different taxes it affects as well: inheritance tax, capital gains tax, income tax. So if you sat the June 24 ATX exam, I hope it went well for you. Please let me know how you got on, what topics you liked or didn't like that came up.